Q2. A Taiwan analyst forecasts disappointing iPhone shipments in the second quarter of 2020. In spite of strong pre-orders for a new budget model, Apple is expected to sell fewer phones in Q2 in a market battered by the pandemic. That's bad news for Apple's suppliers, which include Taiwan's Pegatron and Hon Hai precision industry. According to the Financial Times, the two are preparing to scale down production, cutting workers and hours at their factories in China.
The new iPhone SE, Apple's latest budget handset, is getting notice from diehard fans and critics alike. Analyst Kuo Ming-chi says pre-orders are beating expectations and could hit 12 to 14 million units in Q2. He said Apple will have to rely on the SE for its Q2 sales.
Apple has slightly increased its orders for the SE model, but it's also slashed its orders for the iPhone 11 lineup to a greater degree, so it's not looking good for volume. We have heard that if Apple doesn't see demand improve in April and May, they'll cut our orders again, maybe into the third quarter.
Apple is facing a slump in demand amid the pandemic, and some of its outlets in the US have been forced to close. The UK's Financial Times reports that Hon Hai, Apple's contract manufacturer, has paused hiring at its production site in China's Zhengzhou. According to the report, the plant has curtailed overtime hours and is encouraging workers to take holidays. Hon Hai has responded saying there have been no layoffs. The report also said that the Apple supplier Pegatron has fired 1,000 temp workers due to shrinking US orders. Pegatron has responded, saying all its China plants were operating normally and that it would not comment on specific orders from individual clients.
There can be huge fluctuations in the number of employees between the low season and peak season. It can fluctuate by over 50%. So they have always hired a lot of temporary workers. This time around, it might be that there aren't enough orders and production capacity is too high. So those temporary workers that have reached the end of their contracts don't get their contracts renewed. That's the first sort of adjustments they would make. Only if the situation can't continue would they lay off full-time employees.
The pandemic is wreaking havoc across many industries. Production of Apple's iPhone 12 has already been postponed, with the coronavirus dampening its sales forecast. With no end to the pandemic in sight, Apple's supply chain is bracing for lean times ahead.